Hey everyone, this is Marjorie Green from American Truth Seekers, and I just want to get with you guys. I've got a special guest coming on today, Ramon Aponte, so he'll be joining us pretty soon. We have a lot to talk about. I talked with him for about an hour on the phone last night and learned some very amazing things. Basically from the Puerto Rican community. Learned a lot about Florida, and we just had a great conversation. So it's really good to hear what people have to say, especially from different communities, and I think you're going to really enjoy the conservative side of a Puerto Rican. Ramon is someone you may have seen his videos probably after the hurricane. I know that's when I found him because he made some really interesting videos telling about the truth and the situation going on down in Puerto Rico. But he's very informative, well-spoken, and good on the issues. He's made a lot of other videos. He's got a channel on YouTube, which I've enjoyed watching some of his videos. One of them I really liked was the soft bigotry of low expectations. So that I enjoyed watching his video and learned a lot. So we're just waiting for Ramon to comment and let us know he's here, and then we can jump on and ask him lots of questions. Hi. How's it going? I can't hear you very well.
Okay, maybe just give me a minute. I'm just gonna fix something up real quick.
Okay. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. I've just been relaxing, reading a little, I'm passionate about reading, so.
Oh yeah, reading is awesome. It's the way we stay educated.
Yeah.
Because you can't really trust our mainstream media to necessarily keep you educated on all the topics, right?
No. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. How's everybody doing? Hi. Everybody good?
Yeah. I told him you were coming on, and I said to ask questions, comment. I talked a little bit about who you are. I told him that we talked for about an hour last night, and I really enjoyed our conversation. I told him that you're conservative, Puerto Rican, and that you're in Florida, and you have a lot to say about that. I told him how you have a YouTube channel, and you put out some great content on YouTube, but something interesting happened to you recently. So I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about your background and tell us about what happened on Facebook.
So basically, my name is Ramon Aponte. A lot of people know me today as the Puerto Rican conservative. Beforehand, I was known as Socio for America. I still have that page up. I have almost 6,000 followers on that page. On my personal page, I have close to 4,000 friends and almost 7,000 followers. So that's 11,000 also on that page. Yeah. So I've been getting into doing videos after Donald Trump decided that he would be running for the presidency, due to the fact that there were a lot of stigmas that were associated with Donald Trump at the time that didn't correlate with a lot of the information that I already had on Donald Trump. And because of that...
Right. Let me stop you there for a minute. Is that because you're Puerto Rican and that's mostly your friends and family and you heard negative things from them?
Exactly, because at the time, okay, even though I've always been ideologically aligned with conservatism, I grew up in an extreme left household.
Oh, okay.
So my mother was extreme hardcore leftist, my sister, my older brother, etc., etc., and including all of my friends. So basically, after the election hit, a lot of things started opening up my eyes, because the same people that claim to love me and the same people that claim to respect my ideas and my perspective on life ended up being the same people to turn their backs on me because of a political view. It didn't make absolutely no sense to me. So
no, that's very sad. But that's typical of what we see of left. That's what we see. If you don't agree with them, then they want to push you out. They don't want to hear your ideas, and they don't want to hear what you have to say. But sadly, that from your family and friends.
Exactly, Jay. And you know what it is? That this idea has been traditionalized within Hispanic and African American household. It's been traditionalized that somehow, some way, the Democrats and the liberals have a monopoly on Hispanic and Black votes. So anytime you stray away from that narrative, automatically you're seen as somebody that is going against a supposed movement that is working and championing for their benefit, when in no actuality is the complete opposite. I started realizing that the Democratic Party started actually creating laws and policies within these predominantly Hispanic and Black communities to facilitate criminal activity rather than addressing it in the form of racial profiling. Because,
well, I think Chicago is a perfect example of that. I mean, Chicago's democratically controlled. They basically, everyone that lives in the city limits that is of a minority, that is of color, they live in a terrible state. They've got the highest murder rate in the world, and the Democrats aren't helping them, but yet they're told that that's the party they have to trust. Those are the people they have to believe, and it's just a terrible issue. So Chicago's a perfect example, but what happens in Puerto Rico and among Puerto Ricans and other minority groups, I don't think are as widely known in America, but thankfully you're telling us.
exactly. So once Donald Trump came into office, I decided to start campaigning for him. Not because I was ever really truly drawn to American politics, because ironically, I was actually raised to be a Puerto Rican nationalist. So I was raised,
oh, wow.
yeah, I was actually raised under the ideas and concepts of Puerto Rican nationalism. I believed in independence for Puerto Rico. I never believed in statehood. I eventually transitioned. I transitioned into conservatism because I was ideologically aligned with a lot of the ideas that conservatism believed in, which included less government.
Yes. So did you realize that once you started learning more about what conservative values were? Is that how you realized that that was more your alignment?
Yeah, exactly. Because and that's when it kind of like it was a eye awakening experience, because even though I was raised to believe I was a liberal and a Democrat, I never truly aligned with them. You know, as far as their ideas of right and wrong and what laws they believe were there put in place to benefit them, I actually contested. I actually challenged. I actually investigated, and it wasn't until Donald Trump came to be that I ended up conducting even more research, and then through that research, I ended up growing and realizing how aligned I truly was with conservatism, which has taken me to where I'm at now. A lot of people, most traditional Republicans that have been Republicans for 10, 15 years actually call me an extreme right because of how, because of how right-wing I am, So, and this is what I'm saying. We can all make a transition. Some people choose to make a transition from left to right, but it's not a real transition. What it is a correction of a misconception. Because ultimately, they believed that they were liberal Democrats because they thought that liberal Democrat is just an idea, it's just a party, when in no actuality, liberal or Democrat is an ideal, is an ideology that basically, and through this idea, we elect certain politicians that are then put in play in order to complement our ideas of right and wrong, which is the reason why when we vote for a conservative, one of the first things that we look for is this conservative pro-traditional marriage, because that's one of the characteristic traits associated with conservatism.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. But also, I think something interesting is when you elect a conservative, you're electing freedom for the individual and freedom for your business. Whereas, like you're talking about contrasting liberalism, and that is more of an ideology. And yeah, I mean, it could be similarly compared to sort of like a religion and a way of life and an entire thought process versus conservative values, which is freedom of thought and freedom in your life and how you live your life in America.
Exactly. So, and that's another thing, dealing with semantics, the restructuring of information by taking facts and aligning those facts in a way that basically work to credibilize your agenda. This is something that the mainstream media has been doing since Donald Trump came into office. Now, what became even more wicked, what became even more wicked was when I started noticing a pattern of behavior, not only from the extreme left, the Democrats and the liberals, but then all of a sudden now we had to worry about the technocrats. And the technocrats are basically people like Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO and founder of Fascist Book, Larry Page, the CEO and founder of YouTube, and now the owner of Google. So now, after Obama came out on January of 2017, after Hillary Clinton's loss, Obama came out and made a statement in regards to having to declare war on fake news. Do you remember that?
Yes, absolutely. Well, they're also taking what Donald Trump is saying. So the left likes to take anything that the right is doing and they like to twist the narrative. Or they like to take what they're guilty of and then turn it around and point the finger at Donald Trump. And so that's exactly, Donald Trump throughout his entire election was talking about the fake news, attacking mainstream media for not giving him fair coverage of the election as it continues today in his presidency. And so now, Obama just did the little left turn there, took it out and said, we need to attack fake news. But what it is an attack on free speech, right?
Exactly. It's actually been pre-calculated. What they're doing is that they're utilizing the pretext of the circulation of misinformation and the pretext of fake news in order for them to promote and normalize the idea of moderating our freedom of speech through the use of those who are in power through technology. In the new Democratic Party is going to consist of the technocrats, people like Mark Zuckerberg, people in Silicon Valley, working to create algorithms that will moderate us before we even go live because of the key words that are eventually going to trigger these bots to come after us and shut down our videos, which is exactly what they're doing now. When I came out,
tell us what happened to you. You had something, you talked about the other Facebook you had. So your experience with Facebook, you told me last night, what happened to your page?
What happened to me in Facebook, it started all the way when the situation happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, when there was supposed to be a rally for Unite the Right.
Yes, and that was it was in July this summer, I think.
Exactly. So it was supposed to be a rally to unite the right, and it was also a rally to show support for the Confederate statue of General Robert E. Lee, I believe, right?
Robert E.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were going to tear it down.
Exactly. But in
race history and remove statues and in the name of racism.
Exactly, because we're presently going through a stage of historical revisionism and historical denialism. Now, at that specific moment, the rally and the event got hijacked by two groups, the Tiki Torch Nazis, and then and then another group. Huh?
I said I like that one, Tiki Torch.
Yeah, the Tiki Torch Nazis. And then it was another group known as the American Vanguard.
Okay.
And if you remember, and we have to learn how to disseminate the right. We can't correlate every aspect that proclaims to be right wing. People have to be ideologically aligned with what it means to be a right wing in order to embody it. So I did a little bit of research on the Vanguard. So I go into their sites, and there was a quote that they kept chanting throughout the Charlottesville situation, and it was blood and soil.
Blood and soil.
Exactly. So it was a whole bunch of racist stuff. So I went back and I did a video on it in order to clarify and distinguish the difference between true right-wing conservative and Republicans, and those that have hijacked the party because they're only playing the part of moles for the Democratic Party. We all know.
Right. Hang on, aren't they basically the same people that were in the Occupy movement, the Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street? Remember that?
The one that organized it, yes.
Yes, and then they moved into this and call themselves conservatives. They call themselves Republicans. They call themselves Trump supporters, but they're really not. They've hijacked the movement, and then they paint it into this racist, crazy nonsense that mainstream media wants to plaster all over the news.
It is paid for propaganda.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. Historically and traditionally, we all know, anybody that knows American history knows that the Democratic Party is a paramilitary extension of the Southern Democratic Party.
Yes, which is part of the KKK.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about. The KKK is a paramilitary extension of the Southern Democratic Party, which is the reason they're trying to conduct the revisionism of how history is written by correlating racism exclusively with the South because of the Southern Democratic Party, which is why they're trying to correlate racism with the South and the Southern heritage, which in turn goes to the Confederates. When we all know, when we all know that through tradition, all the way from the 1870s all the way to the 1920s, the Democratic Party utilized the KKK to deter Republicans from voting in favor of civil rights laws to protect African Americans from Ku Klux Klan attacks and racist attacks at that time. This happened all the way from 1870 to 1920. In 1920, they showed their last show of force, which was called the Ku Klux Klan Bake, which was in 1920, and then by 1940, they ended up losing power, and then it was the rise of a new hate movement, and then it was the rise of the Black Power movements, and it was the rise of all these Black nationalists and pro-segregationist Black groups. That's when the Democratic Party decided that they would exchange one form of hatred for another.
Well, they learned something. They learned that they had to use the Black people they had to use them and control them in order to get their votes and continue their rise in power. So they changed they had to hide their KKK background. They had to hide all of that and change it into, we're your party, we're the ones that are going to help you, we support you. And they had to completely change it. And then the civil rights movement came up through there.
Exactly.
So that's what we've seen the Democratic Party do. I mean, we even know that now from the JFK files that President Johnson was a member of the KKK. Mm-hmm. One of our presidents of the United States, and that was in the 1960s. So you're absolutely right. I mean, the Democratic Party has to hide their bigotry, and they have to hide basically their racism.
Exactly. So after I created a video on it, the video ended up going viral. I ended up getting almost 1 million views in 24 hours.
Wow.
What they did was, it was awesome. That's what I thought at the moment. And then what occurred next was that Facebook completely shut down my account. And they ended up sending me an email telling me that I need to send them a photo image of myself because my page was suspected of suspicious activity. They didn't go into detail.
Because your narrative on race didn't fit the Facebook narrative or what's politically correct or the type of language that should fit that kind of talk or that kind of video.
Exactly. So they...
So you had to prove to yourself who you were.
Exactly. So I ended up sending, it really is. I ended up sending the picture and everything. They never turned my page back on. Matter of fact, they left it off, and I still can't get into that page because then what they did was after you submit the picture, what they do is that they tell you, we'll get back to you as soon as the picture is cleared. So then anytime that I try to log back in, it will tell me the same thing. We'll get back to you as soon as your photo is accepted. and they never
Wow.
got back to me. Yeah, so they shut down that page. Then
So there's a
recently,
full of real Facebook censorship. I mean, people talk about it all the time. It's something that we're hearing about. People put it in their comments. They'll say they shared something on their Facebook page and it disappears, or that they'll try to watch something, they're not able to watch it. This is something we repeatedly see. People are saying in their comments, they send me messages and tell me they can't see something. I'm sure you've gotten those same messages. So censorship is real. So there's a limit of free speech actually happening in social media.
it was expected after Barack Obama handed over authority over our internet services to the United Nations. That was expected,
Yeah.
which is the reason. Yeah, which is the reason it was contested by Ted Cruz. The only politician out of all the politicians was the only one that actually contested it and knew what were the possibilities. Which
Well,
are the huh?
the politicians aren't going to contest it because they're career politicians. They're not really from the people.
Exactly.
I mean, as you know, President Trump is basically the only politician right now that's actually for the people and from the people. But otherwise, yeah, I can't believe Ted Cruz is like the only one. But for Obama to hand over the internet to the UN was absolute insanity, and nobody stopped him. It was the worst mistake America could make in recent times.
It wasn't surprising to see Barack Obama being there. We all witnessed Barack Obama slowly but gradually attacking American exceptionalism. And he started with the foundation of America, which is the American household. When he began enforcing, for the last 6 years of Obama's last 2 terms, Obama's main focus was the push not only to normalize same-sex marriages and same-sex health bills and such. He also wanted to normalize gender-neutral bathrooms.
Yeah. Which I'm sorry, I don't want any men in my bathroom. Not
exactly.
No. I'm gonna throw them out. I will throw them out. And like we talked about last night, there's a lot of beta males, and I'm pretty sure I'm capable of throwing them out of my ladies' restroom.
And this is one of the things that struck me as odd. Why would this man be so insistent in promoting these ideas, this ideology? Because we can honestly say that legislation is an extension of our ideas of right and wrong. So if you believe that this is right, then fundamentally there's something wrong with this guy.
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, I think I'm not going to bash gay people because honestly, I don't think what people do sexually should be their identity. I don't really care.
Yeah.
That should be how you introduce yourself. Like, hi, I'm Kevin Spacey and I'm gay, so that's why I come on to 14-year-old little boys. I'm not really into that. But what I will say is no natural born man belongs in the women's restroom where I could be in there, or my daughters could be in there, or some little girl who left her mom and dad and said, I have to run to the bathroom, and she runs to the bathroom, and then there's some transgender in there or whatever, and she gets raped, which has actually happened. That's something that's actually happened. So I agree with you. Obama definitely tore down many of our traditional values, which makes America completely separate from the rest of the world. America should be the place where, no, you don't have to worry about a man being in the women's bathroom. That shouldn't be our issue. But you're right. We had a president that actually put that into play, and it's something that, and if you react against it, then you're labeled homophobic. If you react against it, then you're the bad person. So the conservatives are, again, painted in the bad light to the minority groups and to the gay community, and just made to look bad completely. But it's like, what do? You know what? We do what you and I are doing right here. We talk about it, we say the truth, and it's got to be said. You and I aren't getting paid to do this. We're representing people, and we're going to speak our minds and tell the truth and say what needs to be said and continue to push it. And I think it's so important. It has to happen.
Yeah. And just to reiterate on what I had spoken earlier, my opposition to Barack Obama's same-sex pursuit of promoting these policies and these legislation has nothing to do directly with the LGBT community, because I don't have no problem, like you say, as a conservative. I don't care. You live your life as long as how you live your life doesn't affect me.
Right.
I don't care how you choose to live your life. But that wasn't my problem. Wasn't with the LGBT community. My problem was with the language, associated with the policies being implemented for the LGBT community, which is that I just don't believe that we should be amending laws that cancel out other people's religious beliefs.
True.
So
Because
if our country is founded on constitutions, if we're a constitutional republic, then we should be upholding our constitutions and not amending new laws to cancel out the Constitution. So when Barack Obama ended up drafting and implementing these legislation to help to do what he believed, help the LGBT community, he did it, but he did it in a way that what it did was that it canceled out the constitutional right of an individual to say, well, because your way of life conflicts with my religious beliefs, then I cannot marry you. From that point on, the legislation that he created,
like the bakery that they refused to make the wedding cake.
Exactly, and she was ready to lose her license and everything.
Yeah.
I don't believe that should be, I don't think that one constitutional freedom or right should impose on another constitutional freedom or right.
No, absolutely not. But that was what they pushed, the identity politics. And the Democrats, and especially the Obama administration, and they continue to do that. And they push it into mainstream media where they separate everyone into little groups and put everyone against each other.
Intersectionality.
Yes, exactly. And then we saw it come to a head with the Women's March. I mean, the Women's March was the culmination of all the minority groups minority groups, but also those identities that Barack Obama and his administration separated all these identities. You've got the gay community, women's rights, pro-abortion, Muslims. They put them all together and kind of militarized them, where they knitted their little pink hats. I can't even say the word. But anyways, they all wore their hats and marched in the streets because they were all angry that they didn't get Hillary Clinton for president, because she was supposed to be president because it was her turn, obviously, because she was a woman, which is ridiculous. But yeah, so they basically, that put all those identities together, and we saw it just come to a head. It's unbelievable. And now it continues, and they continue to push it to a point where everyone has to be against the conservatives. Everyone has to be against the Trump supporters. And it's pushing the American people to be more divided than we've ever been before. And it's awful. But I will say what's amazing to me, Ramon, is, you're very bright and you observed all this, even though you grew up in a liberal Democratic home with your family and friends, and you just observed and watched, and then you did the research for yourself, and you made up your own mind, which is the ultimate freedom. It's thinking for yourself and coming up with these ideas and realizing that, no, you know what? I really don't believe in the liberal Democratic agenda. I honestly believe in the conservative agenda, and I honestly believe in this man, Donald J. Trump, and I support it. And that, I really have to commend you, for doing that, because that's not something that most people are willing to do. They just stay in the mainstream and keep regurgitating what they've been told or what they've been taught.
You know what it is, that a lot of people have misconceptions of the image that that surrounds the Latin American community. A lot of people that don't know, 46% of the population in Puerto Rico actually draws towards conservatism. But because of the fact that Puerto Rico works like a liberal state, and most conservatives are not extreme or traditional conservatives. They're more like moderate liberal thinking rhinos. You know, that they're not really ideologically in tune with our agenda.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico's government believes in a bloated system of government that micromanages its government and its people, which is the reason why Puerto Rico has an absent economy. Puerto Rico hasn't been able to establish an economy, and it's because of not only the bloated government in Puerto Rico, but because of a lot of policies such as the Jones Act that impedes Puerto Rico from regulating the prices on their own merchandises, and therefore, as Ronald Reagan once said, the trickle-down economy effect. Because
Yes.
if the price of merchandise goes down, then the possibility of selling that merchandise goes up, which opens up a door of possibilities for a whole range of small business owners. You understand?
Okay. We discussed earlier, so they pay an import tax, they pay an export tax. In Puerto Rico, they're paying so much for their goods, so it automatically puts that layer of cost into anything that they try to produce themselves. So automatically, goods from Puerto Rico are going to cost more than they would from, like you said, what, Mexico?
Yeah.
Because, yes.
Because
so they're more, and it's unfair to the Puerto Rican people as it is.
Exactly. Yeah, and you know what it is? I got tired of seeing people stigmatize Puerto Ricans. First of all, Puerto Ricans are American U.S. citizens. The only thing that distinguishes Puerto Ricans from the rest of Americans is our culture and our language, because of the simple reason that Puerto Rico is a regional, isolated region and territory of the United States. We are not, we can't assimilate to the American way of life fast enough because we're isolated. We're in a region miles away from the United States.
Yeah, that is true. And you're separated by an ocean. There's nothing you can do about that.
Exactly, with absolutely no exterior cultural or monetary influence, if we think about it, because like I said earlier, freight transportation represents a significant portion of the U.S. economy. Puerto Rico is not part of the freight transportation economy because Puerto Rico is an isolated regional island outside of in the America that you can basically just go from state to state and just all you basically all you pay is tolls.
Own identity. Like, I know I'm from the South and we have our own culture and identity, but you're right, we can blend easily with the rest of the United States simply by driving across state lines. But You're absolutely right. Puerto Rico can't. They're an island, and that makes it very difficult. Now, you've been telling me something really interesting about Florida, and can you elaborate on that and tell me about population growth and with the Puerto Ricans and the Cubans and how they identify politically and what you think that may affect for the 2020 election?
Yeah, that's actually one of the main reason why I began my organization, the Puerto Rican Republican and Land Conservative Organization, which is a movement that I established in order to draw more Puerto Ricans into the conservative party here on the mainland in the United States. And it's because I noticed that during the elections, okay, first let's go all the way back to the primaries.
Okay. Yeah.
During the primaries, which is basically a pretty important part of our elections,
absolutely,
Puerto Rico basically they pledged all of their delegates to Mark Rubio instead of Donald Trump, because of the simple reason that the Spanish news station Univision has a monopoly on the circulation of information in Puerto Rico. So because of that, and Univision is owned by the Mexican government, so of course they're gonna push. Well, I like to believe that Univision is a state-run media because of the simple reason that they're the same ones that encourage illegal immigration into the United States.
Well, you know, I like to think of CNN as like a state-run media because they're just in bed with the DNC. But anyways, I get your. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Sorry. So,
That's okay.
so I know that, so when the primaries passed, they ended up pledging all of their delegates to Mark Rubio. Now, the reason I found this to be odd is because of the simple reason that Mark Rubio, as everybody probably already knows, Puerto Rico is in a economical crisis. They owe $74 billion, right?
Right, they're in debt. Yes,
Exactly.
it's bad.
So why would Puerto Rico pledge all of their delegates to Mark Rubio, even though Mark Rubio voted against a bankruptcy relief for Puerto Rico?
I don't know. Why?
Because of the dumbing down of America. It affected Puerto Rico too.
Yeah, it's affected everybody.
It really has. So,
Okay,
so from there, boom, it opened up my eyes. I'm like, okay, something is out here.
yeah.
So by the time the election came, Donald Trump came to Florida over here. Donald Trump won, but it was an iffy situation. If everybody recalls, they were counting on what CNN identified as the Big Brown War. Do you remember that?
Right. Yes, absolutely. They were counting on the Latino
The Big
vote.
Brown War. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
The Hispanic vote in Florida.
Yes. Now, we talked last night, we talked about the numbers. I think you were telling me, I can't remember the percentage you said, but it was roughly around 280 something thousand votes.
Exactly.
That Trump took Florida by.
Exactly, because when Donald Trump came to Florida and people voted for him, he beat Hillary, but he didn't beat Hillary by an outstanding number. He beat Hillary by a 1.3% vote advantage.
Yeah.
Which equates to, like you said, 280,000 votes.
That's not a lot. We know that's not a lot.
If we take into consideration that it's already been predicted by USA Today, by CNN, by CBS, that Puerto Ricans will become the new majority Hispanics in Florida by 2020, which is exactly by the second term of Donald Trump. Now, what
does that mean, though?
Well, what it means is that
what does that mean? How does it change?
It equates into numbers. Basically, once Puerto Ricans take over Florida, it's going to equate to 1.5 million voters, Puerto Rican voters, not Latin American or citizen voters that you might have 75% that can vote and 25% that are illegal. 100% of Puerto Ricans can vote, which means that all of the Puerto Ricans that come will be here voting. Now, if you got 1.5 million Puerto Ricans in Florida, then you're going to have more than 6 times as much as was needed when Donald Trump, to defeat Donald Trump. Because it only took 280,000 votes to beat Donald Trump. This time, for 2020, we're going to be up against 1.5 million traditionally left-leaning Puerto Ricans in comparison to traditionally right-leaning Republican Cubans.
Yeah.
So, yes.
That means that Florida goes blue.
Exactly. So the Puerto Ricans are going to be replacing the Cubans, and being that the Cubans per se are traditionally Republican, which I don't buy it, because I'm a person that I deal with numbers and I deal with research. And let me tell you, less than 62% of the Cuban population in Florida voted for Donald Trump, compared to 82% who voted for Barack Obama.
Wow. Yeah. So that's not necessarily as conservative as it leads.
Exactly. So this is what I'm saying. We got rhinos on the right. We have people that claim to be conservative and Republicans, but they don't know what it means to be Republican or conservative. Now, taking that.
That's true.
Now.
That's very true.
Now, taking that into account, right? Puerto Ricans, on the other hand, are concentrated in Central Florida. How can it be possible then 84% of Central Florida voted for Donald Trump?
How is that possible?
I'll explain how it's possible. Because the Puerto Ricans that are presently here in the United States, They're the first wave of Puerto Ricans, and the first waves of Puerto Rican that left Puerto Rico left the island because 1/6 of the entire island of Puerto Rico is inhabited by illegal immigrants from the neighboring country, the Dominican Republic. So
Wow.
they displaced 600 to 700,000 Puerto Ricans, and they came to Florida looking for a better life and looking for work. And the majority of the people that left because of the economy were doctors, were prestigious, a lot of
Right.
prestigious. They said that more than 3,000 professionals, doctors, engineers, electricians, people with careers left Puerto Rico, leaving a total of maybe 3, 4 doctors in Puerto Rico during the crisis, during the
Oh,
economical crisis. Yeah.
that's very sad.
So a lot of people know the surface of the situation, but nobody knows the underlying problem. And the underlying,
No.
exactly. And the underlying problem, like I said before, has to do with the fact that they have corrupt politicians
Yes.
that are using the race baiting rhetoric in order to entice them into traditionally hating the right without giving the right a chance. Even
So it's an education process. Basically, they're training their minds, the Puerto Ricans' minds, to believe that they have to vote liberal, they have to vote Democrat. But it's only the first wave of Puerto Ricans that came to Florida that actually vote conservative, is what you're
exactly,
saying.
exactly,
Okay, which is also, it's another issue. It's poverty and education,
yeah. But this is the
right?
reason they were able to relate to Donald Trump, because they were the victims of displacement. The first wave of Puerto Ricans were the victims of displacement. They were displaced by illegal immigrant workers.
Oh, right. So they totally related to his
So they related
message.
to Donald Trump's idea
Yeah.
of building the wall and ensuring that America comes first.
Oh, it probably resounded with them, maybe even more than it resounded with most Americans.
Exactly. Now, the
Yeah.
second wave of Puerto Ricans that are coming in now are coming in under a different pretext. Because
Okay, tell me
now,
about.
after the mayor of San Juan, Carmen Yulis Cruz, ended up basically campaigning, launching a smear campaign against Donald Trump, claiming that Donald Trump was not sending help to Puerto Rico, when in all actuality, I proved. I ended up, after the Charlottesville video, I created a video on Puerto Rico after I did research, and that video once again went viral. But
I saw that one. That's how
yeah,
I found you.
but this video went so viral that I must have reached almost 15 million people through like 30 different outlets. I'm talking about, my video was shared by people that I didn't even know on YouTube channels,
That's awesome.
websites. Yeah, on websites. You can still Google it, Puerto Rico truth bombs. You
Yes.
Google it
Yeah.
and you'll find any website, you'll see my video. And I really got a chance
Puerto
to really reach people.
Bombs. Okay, so it's called Puerto Rico Truth Bombs.
Yeah. So after I
Okay.
dropped that, I reached a whole bunch of people, basically telling them that it was the mayor, Carmen Yulis Cruz, who was sabotaging the relief efforts in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
understand?
yeah. She was something else. Her whole agenda is the same as the agenda you see on the left and from the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, all of them, Hillary Clinton, is to just attack and tear down Trump. That's the whole. And
That's
so
because
she went right along with the playbook, and everybody put her all over the news. I mean, they put her up there and had her talking all the time, and she looked like a fool when people like you pointed her out and other people pointed her out, where she's standing there and talking in front of supplies that have right behind her say, from the US, from America, and she's saying that Donald Trump isn't helping us. She absolutely looked like a fool. But your video was great, and it did. I watched it. It came across. I saw it somehow, and I started following you. But most of this information that you're talking about, we don't know, and so people don't understand how within 3 years, because of the Puerto Rican wave of people coming into Florida, and because of the population growth, and because of there being, fed the liberal agenda and they just identify with the Democratic Party, people don't understand how that could drastically affect the election in 2020. And
exactly.
It's really scary.
Exactly. So basically, so I decided, you know what? I'm tired of seeing the right stigmatized. Racists do not embody the right. People that are strictly white nationalists, you're no patriot, and you're not even American in my eyes.
Absolutely.
You know, these ideas that corrupt and disrupt and distort what it really means to be American and what it really means to be a patriot. These ideas don't embody the right. So I took it upon myself to come together and create an organization. And the organization is basically called the Puerto Rican Republican and Latin Conservative Movement, because like I stated earlier, Donald Trump only won by a 1.3% vote advantage in Florida. It is determined that Puerto Ricans are going to be the new majority by 2020, which is going to equate to 1.5 million votes. That's 6 times more than was needed to defeat Trump in 2016. And because of this, by me launching this organization here in Florida, I'll be able to once again renormalize the right, renormalize the Republican and the Conservative Party with charity, with benevolent agenda. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
you were telling
so
last week you wanted to be able to like help bring services, job services, etc., to the Puerto Rican people and help them understand how they can excel and can achieve with conservative values as opposed to liberal values.
Yes, because I'm the program that I'm creating is basically going to target certain aspects of dysfunction in society. And when I talk about dysfunction, I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about dysfunction is something that is out of our control, that basically starts causing a trickle down effect of consequences, negative outcomes.
So, we are seeing our nation big time. It's trickling down, like all of everything's falling apart. Our traditional values are falling apart. And It's sad because it affects children and it affects their generation. And then if it continues to degrade, it affects the next generation and it just hurts America.
Yeah, really true. So, so the best way for us to combat, I'm gonna give you an example. The best way for us to combat poverty, we can combat poverty, and in turn we can combat socialism, because we all know that welfareism is an extension and a working part and component of socialism. Because before a government can be absolutely socialist or communistic, first the people have to become completely reliant on that government.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is why Obama brought America partially into a system of socialism, because only after Barack Obama came into office did we find ourselves as 1/3 of the U.S. population relying on the U.S. government in one form or another. Approximately 109 million U.S. citizens on welfare. So while he worked to promote welfare in the American household, simultaneously, he worked to create more lenient policies for illegal immigrants to come in and take advantage of the jobs that Americans weren't taking advantage of. Specifically, Americans that have no professional trade or are unskilled workers, because ultimately these are the ones that are affected by the illegal immigrants coming into this country and taking certain jobs, because these jobs can become available to American unskilled worker and labor forces. You understand?
Absolutely. So the whole agenda is if he can make Americans complacent and lazy and dependent upon the government,
socialism,
then Right, it's socialism. And then you bring it, you allow the illegal immigrants to come into the country. They come into the country and they can take advantage of welfare, they can take advantage of food stamps, they can take advantage of putting their children in the schools, and at the same time, they can get hired and work these jobs and get paid and not have to pay taxes. And so they're virtually living better than, say, that those complacent Americans that are depending on the US government. But it's a dumbing down. They're dumbing down the Americans. And then we saw him take the step in what he did with healthcare, which was complete socialization of the United States healthcare. And our Congress still hasn't fixed it. I mean, Trump is screaming and screaming to fix it. And then talk about rhinos. Here we have Republican controlled Congress and a Republican president that is ready to sign something into law to fix healthcare, to repeal and reform this crazy Obamacare that we got handed. And then we have these rhinos, or we really have these career politicians that could care less about America. They only care about getting reelected and sitting there in Washington doing their job, but they do nothing. And that's not a Republican or Democrat issue. That's an American issue, like you were saying. It's pathetic, and we can't put up with it anymore. I know the Tea Party is against it. A lot of conservatives are speaking out and saying that we voted for Donald Trump. We voted for the MAGA, Make America Great Again agenda, and this has got to be done. I mean, it absolutely has to be done. So what you're speaking of is making Americans complacent and lazy. It is absolutely the road to socialism. And we watched it happen for the past 8 years.
We did.
And it's terrible.
We did. And you want to know something, Marjorie? We got to a point. America got to a point, and nobody realized this. I realized it because I'm awake. I'm not woke. I'm awake. You know?
Yeah. Right.
You know how close we were to becoming a socialist country? When a person like Bernie Sanders can promote the idea of universal basic income and get almost the entire millennial generation to support him, that's when you know that America was headed towards the wrong route.
Oh, shocking. And it was terrifying. That many people supported Bernie Sanders. Unbelievable. And I'm afraid they'd support him again. There's been no change. But it's an education issue. And it's a willingness to wake up and listen to the truth. You and I were talking last night, and you used a funny term, and I laughed about it, and you called it aggressive truth. And so, you know how we hear about liberals, and they're so offended when Donald Trump, he tweets, and they're offended by his tweets, and, oh my gosh, somebody's got to take his Twitter away. They just can't stand it. But you called it aggressive truth, and I just thought that was hysterically funny because that's a perfect term. Exactly. But explain why does aggressive truth hurt people and turn people away where they won't listen to the real truth that's being said?
Because it's a psychological mechanism. It's a psychological mechanism that extends from our cognitive dissonance.
Right.
Are you familiar with that term? The cognitive dissonance is actually a mechanism inside of our head that prevents new information from being retained by us if it conflicts with information that's already there.
That's right.